It's time to bring in the voice of experience to this debate. Tim Bitsberger was an assistant Treasury secretary for financial markets. He has also been a consultant to commercial and government clients, including the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve. Tim is currently a managing director here in New York at BNP Paribas, where he deals with central banks and sovereign wealth funds. Tim, you used to work in the Treasury Department. You've still got friends there. What do they say?
I think they're frustrated, Eric. This is an incredibly time-consuming process for them. They've had to put everything they're working on hold, such as GSE reform, the FSOC, all those types of things. But I think they're very frustrated. But I do think that they think a deal is in sight, probably in the $2 to $2.5 billion range.
Are they similarly encouraged the way that Tim Geithner is encouraged, which is to say they look at the bond market today, the 10-year yield dropped to 2.81%. Nobody in the bond market seems to be concerned about the U.S. not being able to reach a deal on the deficit or, heaven forbid, a downgrade of the AAA credit rating. Right.
Well, I think that's the good and the bad of the situation. I think the U.S. Treasury market has not penalized the U.S. government for its politics, and I don't see that happening.
Really? The chickens don't come home to roost?
I don't think so. I think that this isn't a situation where this is politics. This is political theater. No one in the marketplace thinks that a U.S. default is imminent. I think the U.S. 10-year yield is responding to really the situation in Europe.
Let me drill down a little further, if you don't mind, on that point. Is this just political theater, or has there, in your mind, been a transformation? We hear about, the 78 freshman Republicans in Congress. Do they represent a shift in the Republican Party? Is the Republican Party at the negotiating table today the same Republican Party that you worked for?
Clearly not. I mean, but that being said, the federal government has also grown exponentially since I was in government as well. So I think there is a reason for Republicans to respond the way they, in part the way they have. But and that's why I see this thing getting drawn out even more and more.
Let's go back to the mindset of the Treasury investor. If, in fact, this is a different Republican Party, and keeping in mind your point about there being a whole lot more debt out there right now, what happens the next time around? It does seem as though the president isn't going to be able to lead these negotiations to a point where there's a long-term deal on the debt ceiling. They're going to have to confront this issue, even though he doesn't want to. He swore yesterday he wouldn't sign a deal that extends it for 30, 60, or 90 days. They're going to have to confront it again in the future. What if it's next year? What if there's more of a Tea Party influence? What if there are more people who say, hey, it doesn't matter if we don't raise the debt ceiling? At that point, will Treasury investors get concerned?
I still don't think so. I think that the U.S. government is it's the strongest economy in the world. It's the strongest militarily. It's the worldwide currency, and maybe they should be worried. But I think all those factors just kind of mask what's going on politically.
Is there room in the future for people like you in today's Republican Party? Do you think they'll still want sort of the voice of sanity, the financial professional, the guy who understands how investors behave? Or will it be more about politics?
No one's calling me up, but I do think a lot of this is politics. This is free publicity for people running for higher office. This is in the front page of the newspapers and on shows like this every single day, and it provides people just a platform to articulate their views.
Well, I don't want to feed the political fire, and I certainly don't want us to get sensationalist for no reason. So let's bring it back to reality for a moment. Come August the 2nd, what are we going to see in your mind? Where do you think this is going to go? What do your friends in Treasury, the people whom you're talking to, think this is going to end up? What are they going to be dealing with?
Well, I think the latest, as you guys have reported, I think it's probably a $2 to $2.5 billion deal. Trillion deal, excuse me.
Let's hope it's not billion.
Let's hope it's not billion. That would last about a second. 2 to 2.5 trillion over a shorter time period than's been discussed. But I think that's the deal on the table. Remember, debt ceiling is about our past debts. Really
everybody seems to forget that.
Everyone seems to forget that. The budget debate should be about the futures. But unfortunately, the political theater kind of marries the two together.
Would we have been better off with a clean vote on the debt ceiling and a separate debate on the budget?
I just think that's
I mean, it's politically impossible.
Politically impossible.
Would it have been better in principle? Or is it good to use one as leverage against the other?
I think it's probably good to use a little bit of leverage against the other. I think the debt ceiling provides a referendum on the current economic policies in place.
Tim, it's great to have you back on the Inside Track. Look forward to our next conversation. Tim Bitsberger, he's a managing director at BNP Paribas, former assistant Treasury secretary for financial markets. a man who knows what he's talking about when it comes to Treasury, the bond market, and the debate over the debt ceiling.